Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining. Thank you, Ricardo, for being with us here from sunny Lisbon. I think a lot of us here in North America, we envy you so much for being in such a nice weather. We have here a -3, so not as good as we were hoping for in the spring. We are, as I mentioned, we are recording this session, and this session will be posted on YouTube. Please, for those participating, please make sure that you ask as many questions as possible. We want to bombard Ricardo with questions. He's going to talk about such a wonderful topic about business transformation. And we are in the midst of business transformation right now with everything that's happening in the world. So without further ado, I will pass it on to Peter to introduce Ricardo and kick off this session.
Thank you, Joanna. And again, welcome, Ricardo. Ricardo and I known each other for a number of years. I don't think I want to admit how many years we've known each other. Maybe Joanna, you can just advance the slide for a sec. We've served together on the PMI board of directors for 2 years, which was a great pleasure. 1 year when Ricardo was chair and 1 year when I was chair, so it's kind of neat. Ricardo very generously is a very generous offender with his time and his thoughts. So he was very nice to give us a testimonial for the book that Joanna and I wrote, GenP. Here's a picture of Ricardo and I from about 1.5 years ago when we could physically get together. But as I was, Ricardo's had an exceptional career. He's written, authored many books. He's done consultancy in Brazil, his native Brazil, although as Joanna mentioned, he's in Portugal. He had 4 years with the United Nations, serving as in their PMO for UN Ops. He worked for, I think it was 4 years with Brightline Initiative, focusing on business transformation. And he's now embarking on a new career, helping organizations implement large infrastructure projects. But, as I said, Ricardo, before we get into the questions, just like to remind you where you and I were about 10 years ago. We both happened to be in Sao Paulo on business at the time. And you were so kind and generous to take me out for lunch in one of the best restaurants in the world, if you remember.
Yeah.
So not only were you very generous with your support of me at that time, which I'm very, very appreciative of, you also paid for the lunch, which I'm also very appreciative of. So thank you very much again for that.
Thank you.
So with that, let's get started. And I guess maybe we'll just hit the topic head on. And you worked, as I mentioned, for the PMI Brightline Initiative in how PMI and project management can support organizations at the most senior levels. So you had the opportunity during your time to talk to a lot of business leaders, exceptional business leaders. You got to go to Davos and talk to the leaders there. So what are some of the things that you're seeing, especially as Joanna mentioned with this world of COVID? What are some of the things that you're seeing that business leaders are struggling with as they're trying to transform and adapt to the changing world?
Yeah, no, first, Peter and Joanna, it's a pleasure for me to be with you. And also it's a pleasure to be with friends. Peter and I, we know each other for such a long time, and we have been together so many times. It's so strange to see that photo that we took when you gave me the book. People are still getting together, right? Today, everybody is trying to stay away from each other because of that. But this is, for me, what we are facing. Of course, when Brightline was created, there was no COVID. So, but there was still a strong need for business transformation. And what we see now, it's just the wave that we thought it was a big wave became a tsunami, and this is how I want us to frame. So what is happening today, it's not just about change, okay? Because change is among us since ever, right? Since ever. If we go back 300 years, we were evolving. What is the difference now is that the pace is completely different. So things are turning in an absolutely many times unpredictable way. So organizations that were strong, efficient 30 years ago, they just disappear today. So things are evolving in such a dramatic pace that I think that one of the key aspects of many executives, many senior leaders, is that they don't know what to do, what is the best approach. And we are at the same time receiving an avalanche of information. So how do you process and get this fast and quick reaction? Because the word that most executives were educated was a word much more predictable. You do A, B, and then there is a good chance C will appear. It's this casuality was part of that. What we see here, it's something that is completely unpredictable. For example, when we think in 2020, okay, we have a pandemic that would just shut down the planet. Nobody. I was at Davos, and I love to explain. I was at Davos on January 21st, if I'm not wrong, 2020. Every single human being at Davos was talking about climate change, the word, and there was no doubt about the relevance. Everybody, and we heard, oh, there's something happening in China, one virus, and we all thought, okay, I'm saying we had SARS in the past, we had the other. Oh, it should not be a big deal. Okay, so nobody was putting this as the big thing. I came back home, and 40 days after, the world was shutting down. It was beginning of March. Suddenly everybody was caught. Something like U.S. stopped flights and this, and then everything collapsed. We can see a drop in 92% of air traffic. And this is not, because one thing, Peter, that is important is that when you see your business not doing well, you may expect, okay, I'm losing 20%. I reduced that, but nobody's expecting to say, okay, my restaurant that used to have 100 spots for lunch now has 0. It's not that it's now 80 or 75. No, it's 0, means 0, no income. And these made many of business leaders globally to rethink and how can I adapt and reinvent my business? And this is what is the central piece of business transformation. And what is important to others, many people misread business transformation and think that business transformation is digital transformation. It's not. Digital transformation is one piece of what we are calling business transformation. Digital transformation is the technology component that will enable business transformation. But business transformation, and this was very strong work that I did, not only at Brightline, but also at the UN, it's a cultural and human transformation. We are changing the way we handle work. And this is what is about today. And this is what we are living, all of us, and every single company, coming up, going down, not only because of technology, but because of all this volatility. So this is how I want to phrase that. And I want to add one other aspect of that. For example, we are talking, just one example, people working from home, right? We were just speaking about that a couple of minutes ago. So I used to work to travel a lot, okay? For those who know me, a lot. When I say a lot, it's in 2019, I flew something like 1 million miles, okay? And suddenly from 1 million to 0. And how do I keep up? I had to reinvent the way I approach the business. But the biggest challenge is not to buy a new webcam. The new challenge is not to increase your internet plan from paying $20 a month to $30 a month to have a better speed. It's a cultural problem. It's a cultural problem. It's while we talk, children crossing, your pet crossing the street, how you, because now your life is far more integrated in terms of personal, professional, everything becomes in the same bundle. I'm fortunate to have an office, but many people are working on their dining table, you know, they're working in their bedrooms. So this is a big change. And most of the time, the biggest challenge that we need to overcome is a cultural challenge, is a mental, is a cultural challenge. And it's the same example I gave to this. I can talk to a retail store. I can talk to a restaurant. I can talk to a disco, you know, for a nightclub, you know, and it's different. Things are changing in such a pace that organizations need to adapt and be able to adapt and readapt very fast all the time.
The culture is such a challenge too. So what are some of the things you've seen of how organizations can help change the culture? As you say, you're trying to transform, do things differently. It's so hard to get people to do things differently.
Yeah. There are many ways of you shaping culture. You can shape by innovative products, innovative behaviors, like we see, for example, social media. Social media create a whole new behavior. And please, I don't want to say that if this is positive or negative. It's just different.
I don't blame you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just different, but it created a new behavior. For example, when I was young, for me to have a date, it was different. You know, you meet someone, and then, oh, maybe now it's everybody do everything here using a phone. You know, it's, you know, people see it, so it's a different. So it created that. The other way culture is changed is also through the impactful changes in behavior. For example, COVID, we haven't seen yet, because everybody is still thinking that things will go back to normal, exactly as they were in 2019, and they will not. They will not. They will not. It's such a, let me just, it's just a change in the cultural aspect that I don't know what will be the consequence on human interaction on that. And this is shaping the culture that will be in place 10 years from now.
I think, you know, you talked about working from home, and many of us have figured out how to do that and try to do that balance. But you and I both know 5 years ago, companies were resisting people working from home, saying, well, productivity is going to go down. They're going to be doing everything else but working if they're at home. And we've discovered that's not the case, that people can actually be more productive working from home, but they lose the social contact. So it's going to be interesting to see how these things change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing that I love on what you said is that company said, I don't want people working from home because they will, you know, they will be watching movies instead of working. Now they don't have an option. It's something like, look, company, you have two options. You shut down or people go for working from home.
Right.
It's done. So, for example, many people said no. For example, I travel many times to meet people face to face, and just for a meeting. Today, now people are so comfortable of having meetings online, you know, like what we are doing now. So I don't know, people from everywhere doing that. And this is a transformation. And this now on the business side is leveraging many business and creating massive challenges to other business. You know, to other business. I was reading The Economist, and this, Peter, is just because I know it's related to you. The Economist just published something like, I would say maybe 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, the golden era of universities is over. This is the title. If you go and check on the web, and it's incredible because universities will face a dramatic challenge now. For example, for getting international students, the business around universities has been challenged in such a way that it will be hard, Peter, for some of them to survive. So this is what I'm talking, business transformation.
Yeah.
This is what we are seeing now.
Exactly, and I mean, there's so many industries that we're thinking we're going to be in jeopardy because of things happening, managed to hang on, and then suddenly the COVID has really amplified that and accelerated, the importance of doing transformation. As we talk about here, the importance of organizations thinking about what products they're delivering and how they're delivering value to their customers, and especially when their customers' needs are changing, right? If you look at the retail stores, your customers are no longer going to be able to go out and browse the products and services, take cars for test drives or whatever else. So how are you going to continue to sell to them? And so what are some of the things that you saw, organizations who do have successful transformations? What are some of the key things that they do to help make sure that they do get, overcome the cultural challenges and start listening to their customers better?
Absolutely. One thing that I would suggest all of the people attending is that one of the works I'm most proud of during my time at Brightline is that we created a set of principles called guiding principles that you can, if you go to brightline.org, you can download it. And they are something like underlining aspects on how the behavior and the attitude should be for you to get things done. And just to give you some highlights on how successful look like. First one, they recognize that from the idea to the reality, from having an idea of sending the man to Mars and the reality, there is a gap, and they are responsible for filling that gap. Okay, it's not because you put on paper that it will become reality. Paper is a paper, reality is a reality.
Right.
Second thing, every single senior leader of these successful companies, they feel accountable for making this happen. It's not just, I wrote this, I put this on the wall, and then I leave and something magic will happen. They feel. The third one, they plan the resources. They know which kind of resources. And many people think that, money is the only resource. Most of the very innovative ideas, they did not succeed because of money. They succeed because they disrupt in such a way the market. It's not money that drove that. So otherwise, how these massive retail companies in the US would be facing a challenge, because 20 years ago, they own all the money on this planet, right? So what happened? It was not lack of money at that time, right? So when Amazon started, the conventional bookstores were a massive power. When, for example, social media started, traditional televisions were incredibly powerful. So it was not just that. Okay, so they found the right resources and the right skills. Fourth one, that for me is one of the things that for me, it's the most important. Many times when you are inside your business, and this is one of the biggest threats, you become something like blindfolded, or you dig so deep into your own business that you don't scan the environment. You have a restaurant, you go to the kitchen and you stay so paranoid of being in the kitchen all the time, in the kitchen and making that you forget, is there any customer outside? And then you produce, 10 kilos, 20 pounds of food, and there is nobody, no single human being to buy it. And this is exactly what so these people, they understand exactly. And I want to give you an outstanding example here. An outstanding example is Logitech.
I interviewed Bracandero from Logitech. So Logitech, what they did, they just, when COVID struck in, they took the best approach and the best possible speed to move on. You know, and this is exactly what they should have done, and they did. And this is why Logitech is stocks and everything, it just went up sharply. So this is an absolutely perfect example of that. Give me just 1 second here. For some reason. Okay. I was expecting
working from home and modern technology and
no, this is the phone, so I apologize, but no, this is the forefront. So they communicate, and then there are several ones related to the human. So one of the things we need to dominate, and we did a spin-off of that research called the People Manifesto, is that one of the key roadblocks for business transformation is fear. Fear. Let me give you an example, the best way to explain you this. Let's suppose you are a manager of a store, okay, of a chain store on the street. You are there, you worked there for 15 years. You started, you know, as doing reposition of goods, you know, and now you are the manager, okay? That's it. And then suddenly, we have all these online, you know, online sales and this and that. And then your company decides, look, I will downsize my retail and improve my online. What is the first thought? And this was a research we did in 2018 that for me was just something to reinforce some of the feelings I had, is that people, and this is not bad, people act on their own best interest. And please, when I say that, it sounds bad. No, it's people act on what they believe. Even do charity is on your own best interest because it's your interest to help. Okay, right. And what happens with this manager in that store? She or he will think, is my job at risk? Yeah. And not, is this good for the company? Or is this the right one? No, it's what is happening. And then if you don't feel a reasonable answer for that, what you will do? What we hear all the time. This strategy is not right. I don't understand the strategy of this organization. I'm not aware. So you know what is the strategy of this organization. The problem is that you don't believe on that because it's not good for you. And this becomes a massive. And this is why startups and new companies, they adapt themselves much faster because they don't have this legacy mindset. You know, this legacy mindset.
And that goes back almost to the culture again, right? Where, you know, this is the way we've done it. This is the way we've been successful. Why should we change? Right. And so on.
Perfect. And this includes, Peter, this includes project management. This includes the universe of PMI. This includes Agile. This includes waterfall for those who work on. So these include, because everything is changing. It's not just technology, the way we approach things.
Yeah. Okay, so you were going through, you got to the fifth one, blindside. What was the last principle you had, or was there only 4? I can't remember.
Sorry?
The principles that you had for bright line.
No, there are many of them. So I just highlighted some of them. Okay. So you monitor the second, the next one. You plan your roadmap, but you allow space for missteps. So, and what we call fail fast to learn fast. So you allow, and this failure culture, and this is something that in incumbent large and old mindset, they think failure is something that must be punished. And then people, what happened? People fail and hide it. And then when you discover it, it's destroyed. So this is something like, it's a different generation. For example, when you see traditional companies, and please, I'm not saying bad or good, but when you say a massive old style retail store, and you see Amazon, and you see this, it's different. You know, it's different. If you don't adapt, you don't survive. And I want to give you an excellent, for me, one of the best examples of adaptation. It's Microsoft.
Yeah.
Because Microsoft 25 years ago was selling boxes with CDs and disks inside with an operating system. Look what Microsoft became. Microsoft did not miss the train. Microsoft Ring, the only thing that is the same is the name. Everything else, the business model of Microsoft today is completely different from the business model of Bill Gates' Microsoft.
Yeah.
And they adapt, but it's not easy. Many organizations, they just fail. Look, Blockbuster. It's a perfect example. They would have, and I don't know if this is true, many people, that Netflix was offered to Blockbuster for something like 200, 300 million. And oh God, oh my God, you know? So look, it's life. And this is the side of this volatility we are facing now.
Yes, exactly. And I think you make a good point earlier on when you talked about how we get so blindsided with focusing on the business and not thinking about what's happening in the broader environment, right? Not thinking about where the trends are. So did you see ways that organizations can do this? How can they ensure, as you said, when you're the owner of a restaurant, you spend your time in the kitchen to make sure the food is perfect, but don't realize isn't anyone in the table.
Yeah. This is a changing behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I would say for me, I'm Brazilian, you know, and why I want to just create this is, you know, in Brazil, since I was born, I live in a crisis. So it's a permanent stage of crisis, you know, a crisis, financial crisis, whatever. And what happens is that this gives you this ability that helped me a lot. It's stressful, but helps you. So you need to have this fear. I recorded a video recently and I said this, for example, what will you do if your company stops selling tomorrow? What will you do if you lose your job tomorrow? Tomorrow, not in 2 years from now. What will you do if your work becomes irrelevant tomorrow? You still, or your business becomes irrelevant. What will you do if the government changes a law that impacts directly your business? Or if a competitor creates something that just replaces your business tomorrow? If any of these questions make you stay awake tonight, you need to work, because what is the game now? It's trying to envision the future. So I spend at least 10% of my time scanning. Scanning means scanning. What's going on? What's the trend? You know, for example, I'm reading what is the word post-COVID, and then I see 4 or 5 different, and then I try to adapt myself, you know, and this is the management of this volatility and this ambiguity we are living now. And companies must do the same. Companies should not say, oh, I sell oil, so I'm done for the next 100 days. You are not done. Look what happened in April last year. I used to work a lot for oil industry, okay, for those who are watching, a lot I'm a chemical engineer, so I used to do a lot. For me, oil used to be by far the best legal business on earth. There is nothing you can do that could be more profitable. Then suddenly in April, I saw one thing last year that I never saw in my life. The barrel was not cheap, was negative.
Yeah.
Means someone is paying you to take. It's something like, I pay you just to take it.
Yeah.
I never saw that. And this was a massive sign of a disruption in one of the markets that people said, what disrupt this market is war. And this, no, this was not war, was not, everybody was peaceful. So this, and I want to give you a second example is GameStop. now recently on the stock market, because in the past you said, I want to control organized trade, but organized trade means 4 traders operating together.
Right.
You don't say, oh, I want to organize trade. Oh, 100,000 traders working together, every single of them buying 1,500. You know, this is completely, this is the new market. This is something that will change in the medium to long run. The concepts that were on the pillars of, for example, stock market, you know, everybody that is planning to do a short today, you know, operation, shorting a company will think 10 times before doing that, because now there is a chance that the logic will not work. And this is the transformation we are facing in the market that impacts. So this is the way you scam. For example, how you learn with these failures, how schools can learn from what happened last year to avoid problems now. You know, and this is what they should do.
Yeah, absolutely. Joanna just read my mind. I was just going to remind everyone, if you have any questions you want to ask Ricardo, please put them in the chat group. We're watching it. So one of the things I've heard some organizations do at the senior level is they actually task some of their senior managers to behave like their competitors, or think like their competitors, so that, or think like a disruptor, so that they can challenge the company to say, well, if we do this, this is what's going to happen. And you don't try to avoid this groupthink, right? Where people get so wrapped up with, oh yes, this is what we should do. This is what we should do. Have you seen other things that organizations have done, as you said, to avoid this thinking they're putting blinders on and avoiding groupthink at all?
Yeah. One thing that I saw, for example, one example is Volkswagen. They create like a mirror company, not a mirror, but something, and they split the business into 2. One business takes care of the current work and incremental change, and another group talks everything about disruptive change. It's something like you creating 2 things in parallel that are owned by the same, but they operate. For example, this, I'm still thinking that car has 4 wheels. It's a combustion engine or electrical engine. This group here is thinking about how do we move people from one place to another, you know, and then they can come with, you know, completely disruptive ideas. So this is an example of Volkswagen. This is a real example. Another one is Brightline on PMI. So you create something that moves completely outside at a very different pace for you to get somewhere. And then you get into that. And this is what I see also as a strategy. The biggest problem of these structures is that sometimes you create conflicts among these structures because it's a 2 different speed in the same. It's like, for example, when you take Amazon Fresh and Whole Foods, you know, and then what is Amazon Fresh? It's an experiment. Basically, it's an experiment. It's an Amazon experiment on how will be a potential future market, while Whole Foods is an actual delivery, and there's with incremental change. So you create these two pieces to work together.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, you talk about these shadow organizations. I know Joanna, when one of her jobs at the bank, that's what they did. I can't remember which one. They actually created a shadow organization to try to look at how to do digital banking to move away from the mortar. Same sort of idea.
Yeah, it's a perfect. Many banks, instead of saying, let's go digital, no, let's create another bank that is digital. So we don't have this legacy and we don't have this cultural legacy, you know, this cultural legacy. So it's something like, let's start from scratch, and then let's try to be more competitive. This is one of the many ideas.
So Joanna, you want to share a little bit more on this or ask any questions?
Yeah, I mean, that was the idea of running the bank and disrupting the bank. So you basically create this cocoon, inside the bank to actually disrupt the bank. However, as you say, the conflict was that the cocoon became this prodigy child. Everybody loved the cocoon, everybody wanted to be there, and then the rest of the bank was treated like a legacy system where there were the laggers and the people who were not happy campers. So when the people in the cocoon needed help from the outside, for integrations or anything, well, the others of course sabotage them. So this is what's happening. You really have to make sure that as you're creating these organizations, there is no conflict and you are very transparent in terms of what you're doing because you want to treat everybody equally.
Yeah, and this Joanna, you were just talking, and I was just remember I'm doing a project exactly like that now. I am creating a shadow company from a very large infrastructure company in Brazil that will be exactly to remove this legacy mindset. And we are facing I have a meeting now to face this. And another data point that I want to add to you, Joanna, on that is that you must be fast too, because time deteriorates things.
Yes.
So sometimes it's better that you do fast. And if it's not the right direction, you fix.
Right.
Then it takes longer because then you're dragging things, and this is something that is very critical also to see. But what you just said goes to exactly what I said. It's people sabotage. Why people sabotage? Because it's not good for them.
Right.
It's
And
not
they
good
are
for them.
the fear. Yeah.
Yeah, fear. Yeah, and this is human and natural. This is human and it's natural, and this is something we need to manage. And this is why, for example, what I see today is that business are far more connected to individuals. For example, in the past, in the time of my parents, life was something like you go to work, you arrive home, then you start your life. And today, these clear borders, they are not so clear anymore. And also the mission of the company is not just to pay your salary. For example, you want your company to have a position, right? You want your company. For example, we saw so many CEOs saying, our company defends this. We never saw this 20 years ago. 20 years ago, a CEO said, no, I have no business with that. I produce steel, I produce steel. I produce iron ore. I don't have an opinion around politics. So, but now they are facing a massive pressure from employees. For example, my daughter, I love to use the example because my daughter is going to her first job now and starting her professional career. And for her, of course, money is important as for anyone. But she's not selling herself for anything. She said, for example, she said, for this kind of company, I don't work for. I don't even apply. I don't work for. I don't care if they pay more, they pay less. If someone pays me reasonable, I don't want. So this, I was educated, Joanna, in a very different way. I was educated something like, you need to pay your bills, my friend, and just go. So this is the transformation we are facing today. So the companies are not just producing better car, but for example, many of the clients of Tesla, they are not just buying Tesla because it's a good car. They are buying Tesla because they are buying
the experience,
an ideology. They are buying a belief on sustainability. They are buying that idea. It's like Apple. They are buying. It's far more than a phone. It's more than that. You are buying. If Apple starts to sell stoves or ovens tomorrow, I'm pretty sure that they will become one of the biggest players in the market in half a year. Why? Because people have this ideology. And this is a massive transformation we are facing today in almost all segments.
So just building on that, my friend Sully's asked a question, and goes back to what we talked about almost at the beginning around this work-life balance. And I think, part of it is the fact that you said people are looking to work for companies that they feel represent their values and what they want to do, as same for customer as well. But how do you think, or what are your thoughts on how people are going to help manage this ability of, when you're working from home or you're so connected on technology, when does work begin and when does it end, right? When does home life begin, when does it end?
Yeah, Solid, thanks for your question. I would say that I'm not the best person to answer this because I have a clear principle that maybe other people will not agree with me, is that for me, the concept of work-life balance is almost a fallacy. And why? Because at the end, there is no work-life balance. There is only life. There's only life, because when I think about this concept of work-life balance, is that when you are working, you are not living. And if this is a fact, and this I'm talking on my behalf, okay? If this is a fact, it means that you may have a miserable life, right? Because you are spending 10 hours of your day doing something that is not your life, and then you spend maybe 8 hours sleeping, and then when you will leave. So this is why, for example, for me, it's so important that companies, organizations, and the work must be joyful, must be happy, must bring you joy, happiness, excitement, because then it becomes part of your life. And then for you, it's not something that hurts you. For example, I'm now here talking. For me, this is not work. This is life. I'm talking to friends. I'm sharing my ideas. I'm not saying, oh God, oh my God, 10 minutes to finish, and this is a mindset. For example, when people love their companies, and this is what I see when I see admired companies, people want, and this balance is far better. But if you really hate that, what you do, then what I tell, and I do this a lot for young people, it's time for you to find something else to do. I'm not saying that you should be crazy and quit your job, but why you're losing the precious time, doing something that you don't like. And this is my belief. And companies realize that. This is why this transformation is happening. For example, concept of health food. A social impact, giving time to employees to have their own projects. This is all, it's all above and beyond just pay, pay, because people want to do different things. For example, I remember, it's very common to see in the Silicon Valley, for example, people questioning, let me give a Google policy because Google did not respect X, Y, or Z voice. It's above and beyond their job. People got frustrated with Facebook because of the elections and the accusations on fraud, and people get engaged on that. People get engaged, and this is above and beyond because people do not just, I remember in the 90s, when banking was on the top, everybody wanted to work for banking and make a fortune. And, and then people start saying, what I'm selling here, what I'm selling, what's the reason of what I'm doing? And we see COVID now. What makes a doctor, goes on COVID and stay on an intensive care for days, running the risk of getting COVID to save people? It's, look, trust me, it's not only about the paycheck at the end of the month. Because if it's about of the paycheck, maybe you can do 1 day, 2 days, but you will not do that. for long. And this is why the whole society is transforming. And organizations are transforming too, and it's a very complex ecosystem we are facing now.
It is, and getting some positive comments about your statement, and I completely agree. I know when I first started working for a large company here in Canada, what struck me was that the number of people who retired, well, had a pension plan, so they hung on, retired, they didn't even get their pension. They died of a heart attack beforehand because of the stress hanging on. And I think you're right. We're seeing more and more of people understanding, especially as life expectancy increases, that has to be some degree of separation, but you will have to enjoy what you're doing. You have to be very happy and positive, and you feel you're doing the right thing. And if your company's not supporting that, or does not emulate or reflect your values, then you're going to move on. There's no reason to stay, right? And you mentioned that when you came out with the Brightline papers about the inside out employees, of getting the passion. If you're going to you have a transformation, the passion has to come from the employees. So as a company to transform, or a company to grow, a company to introduce new products, the employees have to be so supportive behind it and enjoy and be enthusiastic. Right? We're not going to buy a product from a salesperson who doesn't come like they're going to do a job and not passionate about it. We're going to go somewhere else. So it becomes so much that it's hard. It becomes hard to separate the two, but in fact, they are inseparably separated. And if you're not following one of your passions or a passion, then find somewhere where you can.
And you cannot be, I'm not, because every time we talk about finding your passion in this, it sounds something like, trying to touch clouds. No, it's something feasible. It's something that gives you enjoyment. And I'm not saying that anyone or any company should say, oh, I will stop serving food on the restaurant and I will do dancing. Okay, you can do that. It's not a business. But what I'm talking is that how you can mix and find the right balance, and the right balance. And society knows that, your customers. Why people don't buy anymore on retail stores, on the streets? Because it's less convenient, because they need to carry, because many times they don't find what the product they want to buy, because it's sometimes more expensive. It's all about being comfortable, and it's what is happening. So if people don't get to that, they don't move. They don't move. If people don't understand this aspect, people who still think, oh, I need to buy more stock, I need to make my store bigger. No, maybe your store will become a showroom in the future.
The cute story goes back many years. I'm sure, from our friends at NASA. I think you've probably heard it. Is in the 1960s, NASA was doing a tour of one of their facilities, and one of the newspaper reporters, and they saw someone cleaning, around. And so the reporter asked, well, what are you doing here? And the person turned very proudly, looked at the reporter and said, I'm putting a man on the moon. Right?
That's perfect. Yeah.
That he may be doing some janitorial job, but from his point of view, he's part of a big machine that's putting a man on the moon.
Yeah, that's absolutely a perfect example. And we need to have this. And this is what, when we created the transformation compass, when we put this inside our transformation, is that if you can connect companies' direction with employees' direction, then you have a potential growth. And this is exactly what the transformation. So instead of bringing just consultants and external other people start moving here, if you do not bring this group, it will clash. Your machine does not work. Your machine does not work. Every time I said that at the Drucker Forum in 2019, it was a very bold and polemic. I said, we need to understand that everybody's on the same boat. When you exclude one, they go back. And it doesn't matter. For example, today when we see, for example, this division in the society from more conservative and more liberal and this and that, let me know, this direct has no winner, because, it's only one boat. You know, it's only one boat. It doesn't matter if one starts destroying. You know, what is bad is not, oh, this is bad for the right or it's bad for the left. No, it's bad for everybody, because in the long run, you destroy the boat. And this is exactly how we need to see in a company is the same. For example, if you see this cocoon that you just said, Joanna, on your example, if people say, oh, this is the bad side, or inside the cocoon, the others are the bad side, do you know what happens? You just destroy everything. It's something like you're trying to agree on a share of the pie, and then you disagree on everything and you destroy the pie.
Right.
You know, and then there is no winner.
So the one thing,
This is the
Ricardo, I wanted to touch on, because I think it's very important in the context of business transformation to talk a little bit about leadership transformation, because everything, you know, it starts with the leadership, and that's where you have the glue for your organization. And we've been taught with throughout the years with you know, predictability, like you said, management by control, hierarchies, thinking risk is bad for us, thinking that we have to control change, and you know, like as project managers, we cannot let the changes escape our project and creep our projects and so on. So how do you change that mentality and the mindset of those leaders to transform? Because as I go into organizations, they think that business transformation, to your point, is technology transformation and is process transformation. So they're expecting everything to happen from a transformation perspective outside their area, so not touching them. So go and transform. You know, this is for them, the employees, the processes, the technology, but you know, don't come to us. We paid you to come and transform, and let us know when it's done.
You know, this is what you just said. It's like music for my ears when I'm talking about transformation, because if you go outside today on the streets and talk, do we need to change? Everybody will say, yes, we need to change. We need to change everything. And then I say, okay, I will start by you or by your air. No, not me. Change everything, but I want to continue on my status quo. And I love one thing. I live in Europe, so it's of course Canada. You are both in Canada, but it's probably a little bit more closed than US. I'm saying in terms of social policies. But in France, when Macron was elected, he was saying we need to change, we need to change, we need to change, and he was elected. And then something like 10 days in power, I don't know, he said, let's change this. And then it was almost a revolt in France. They said, no, you are changing. You cannot change that, you know, and then he said, but you vote for me for change. You know, it's something like a change is something that everybody loves to talk. But people as humans, we don't like change. You know, we don't, I can tell you stories from my time at the UN that are very sad. People are poor. People have nothing but a tiny piece of land that is smaller than a bed. And then you tell them, I need you to leave this land because we'll build a house, a small house for you here. Do you know what they do? They don't move. They say, no, I don't live here because if I leave tomorrow, someone will take. And then we are unable to improve something that is good for them because, you know, it's this concept of the change. You know, this concept of it, and this is a big challenge. It's a human challenge. This is why, for example, most of the time, I have to work, you know, today in the projects I work because my work today is managing very large, complex projects, mostly in infrastructure, construction, chemicals, mining. It's to change human behavior. It's to convince the person from procurement that procurement could be done in a different way. It's to convince people from, for example, quality, that we can do a different approach to quality. It's to, for example, the people that work, because there are many employees engaged on that we can build, for example, the dorms and this in a different way that will create a more sustainable environment and this. You know, but people say, no, we need to do like a prison, you know, it's like a prison, you know, and this is the challenge that we face, because it's a human, it's a natural, and this is why, for example, younger generation, and when I say younger, means people with less experience, sometimes they have an advantage because they don't have this, I would say, this filters or this, you know, what is right, what is wrong. You know, they are more fluid, and then they can do more innovative stuff.
I think it's absolutely right, that we have to encourage the diversity of thinking and looking at alternate ways, and even looking outside our own life experience and so on, to see what we can do to do things differently, so that we can adapt and we can change and can meet our customers' needs and solve their problems. It's so important that we do that.
Yeah, I want to take one thing. Indeed, I just put here on the chat about the human brain, you know, and based on criticism and fear. And I want just to suggest all of you that are listening, there is an author that I like very much called Amy Edmondson from Harvard Business School. And her field of study is psychological safety. The problem is that you are dominated by fear, you are dominated by criticism, because you don't feel not safety in terms of money in your pocket, but psychological safety means I feel safe to disagree. I feel safe to say things differently. And she has an incredibly good book on that called about psychological safety. And this is something that I talk always. It's how you can create, for example, in a project environment, on a transformation environment, a psychologically safe environment where people feel safe to disagree, and they don't feel just threatened, you know, that something will happen and will create a trouble for them.
Well, I think maybe on that note, Ricardo, we should wrap up. The time has just flown by. It's hard to believe we've been talking for now. Well, it always does with you. It's always so.
It's always great to talk. You know, it's just talking among friends and sharing some ideas. So I hope that the people attending, they had some nice insights on that. You know, I like very much this informal setting. And I think that, look, what we saw so far in terms of transformation is, I don't want to increase the fear. It's not even close of what we'll see in the next 5 years. I think
I agree.
Just the tip of the iceberg of change. And this change will bring massive opportunities. Okay. And this is what I want. Yeah. If we are with our minds open, I think that there is an unprecedented opportunity for us to do great things.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we have to realize, is fantastic opportunity. So Thank you very much again, Ricardo.
Thank you, Peter. Really, thank you, Joanna. Thank you all for attending. Okay. It was a pleasure to be with you. Enjoy your weekend. Okay. Take care.
Thank you. And so Joanna has a few words to wrap up here. So before we go, so thank you.
Yes, I have something to share, but thank you, Ricardo. And I hope you'll come again and we'll have another session like this one, because this was amazing. So just to wrap up, we have Monday, it's International Women's Day. I am very happy to host a panel with 3 amazing ladies that have started their own business. They're going to talk about entrepreneurship. They're going to talk about changes in the market right now and how they reinvented their organizations and how they invented their practices. And we have lots of prizes as well at the end for those of you participating and asking questions and making sure that, you know, you stay engaged with us. And then we have, after that, there is another, if I can find my screen, Later on this month, we have another webinar with Trish Lynch, and we're going to talk about OKRs, objectives and key results, and how we set up those objectives and we make sure that we measure against them, because this is a big thing to have metrics for organizations and measurements to make sure that we're doing the right job. And with that, for all of you who want to find us, please go to newgenp.com or send us an email at info@newgenp.com. And for any other inquiries, just reach out to Peter and I. And we thank you so much for everything and for being with us.